Hello, and welcome to Parasoft Jtest Unit Test Assistant. Now that we've seen how to create unit tests for a code base, let's continue our unit testing journey by talking about maintaining our unit tests as the code base changes. First, we will import an example project with existing tests from GitHub. Second, we'll make some local changes to the application code and then identify and run just the tests which are impacted by those code changes. Finally, we will build new tests for the uncovered modified code to ensure that it's tested. I'll be demonstrating in Eclipse, but the same actions can be taken in IntelliJ as well. First, let's check out the Parabank example project from GitHub. Go to File, Import, find Git, and choose Projects from Git. And we'll click Next. I don't have the code on my local system yet, so I'll choose Clone URI and then Next. Here, I'm going to provide the Git URI for Parabank. It's at https://parasoft/parabank.git. You can browse this and other repositories at github.com/parasoft. Click Next to continue. I'm going to choose just to check out the master branch for now, and click Next. You can also set the directory where you'd like the Git repository on your system, and click Next again. And this is going to clone the repository. Once the repository is cloned, we need to import the example project. So select Import Existing Eclipse Projects and click Next. Finally, we want to select just the Parabank 3 project and click Finish. This will import the project into your workspace. We're going to make some local changes to the behavior of this Parabank project to see how this affects the existing tests that are already here. However, before we do that, we should populate coverage data for the entire project so that when we make code changes to our project, Jtest can understand the relationship between the tests and the code that they cover, and identify the tests that cover the code changes that we make. In a real environment, we would import coverage data from a nightly test or a CI job. But since we don't have such a job right now, let's run all of the tests in the project. You can right-click on Parabank 3, choose Jtest as Unit Test. This is going to run all the tests in the project using the Jtest runner, which collects coverage. This is also going to take a few minutes, so I'll skip ahead. Once all the tests have run, you'll see application coverage data in the coverage view. All the tests also should have passed. Now we're ready to make changes to the application. Let's expand the Parabank project. Go to Source Main Java, com Parasoft, Parabank, DAO, JDBC, and find the JDBC Customer DAO class. Find the Create Customer method. This method adds a customer object to the database. It sets the ID of the provided customer to a new unique ID, but it doesn't check if it already has an ID. So let's change the method to do that. The change is pretty simple. If customer.get ID is greater than 0, implying that the customer already has one, let's log a warning saying customer ID is already set. And let's return the existing customer ID. You can save the code when you're done. So now that I've made changes in the application, How do I verify that the change is properly tested? One way might be to run all of the tests in the project again, but that would take a while, and developers often don't want to wait for all of the tests in the whole project to run. I could also look for specific test classes for the classes that I modified. For example, I could go to the Unit Test Assistant view, click on this action to open JDBC Customer DAO Test, which is the test for that class. And I could run all the tests in that class. But what about any other tests that may also exercise the modified method? We need a good way to identify and run all of the tests which cover the modified method. To do this, let's look at the Impacted Unit Tests view. This view is populated dynamically as changes are made to the code based on the coverage data and the relationship between application code and the tests which cover it. You can expand Parabank 3 and notice that the view is populated with multiple tests. JDBC Customer DAO Test is included, but so are other tests in the service and web.controller packages. This tells us there are more tests that we should run before committing our code changes to see if any regressions occurred or any tests need to be updated. Let's click the Run All Tests action at the top of the Impacted Unit Tests view, and then click OK on the dialog. The Unit Test Assistant runs all of these impacted tests. When the test run is complete, the Impacted Tests view is updated with the current status of the affected test. Notice that one test failed, this test on submit, which I likely would not have known about if I hadn't run all of the impacted tests. In order to keep this video short, I won't spend time fixing that test right now, but feel free to debug it using what you've learned about Jtest and the Unit Test Assistant. Now, what about new or modified code, which is not covered by any existing tests? For this example, we only added a single code path, but in many workflows, there would be multiple changes in multiple classes. In a previous video, we saw how to add new tests for one class at a time to fill coverage gaps. But when we have a project in source control, there's a better way. Let's look at an example of how to quickly create new tests for all local changes. Right-click again on the Parabank project and choose Unit Testing, Create Test Suite. We've seen this dialog in a previous video, but note the last radio selection. We can choose to create tests for everything that's selected. I selected the whole project in this case, or just the modified methods in the project. Our example contains a single modified method, but many real-world examples would involve multiple modified methods. Let's choose Modified Methods Only and click OK. The Unit Test Assistant will generate tests specifically to cover only the modified code, and it will only add tests which increase coverage. When the process is complete, you'll see the summary indicating that 2 new tests were created. Let's take a look at the tests that were created. You can see that the new tests are pre-configured with mocked customer, mocked call to get ID, and other information to make sure that it covers the new logic. It also contains assertions. Let's run all of the tests now in the suite using the action in the Unit Test Assistant view. Once the run is complete, let's take a look again at the Create Customer method. You'll see that the new block is covered, indicated by the new green markers. And there you go. We have identified and run all of our existing tests that were impacted by local code changes, and we've added additional tests to cover the new logic that we added. The Unit Test Assistant helps you update and maintain your unit testing suite as the business logic changes. Thanks for watching.